I'm joined now by Patterson Hood and Cooley. And I can't think of a more timely moment to talk with you right now than to talk with you about your album American Band. But before we get into that immediate significance, let's take that song you just played, referring, of course, to radio stations banning John Lennon's Imagine.
Right.
Cooley, can you fill me in on the story behind that?
There was actually a long list with a lot of songs, a lot of artists that right after 9/11, the company that owned the majority of the radio stations in America sent out a memo. It wasn't a ban that just sings better, but they recommended that all their stations not play all of these songs on this list.
Because people were just too sensitive at that time?
No, I don't think people are. The only I don't know what criteria they used to determine what was going to go on this list and what wasn't. There were a lot of songs with the word bomb in the title, things like that. And I can't imagine the Gap bands "You Drop the Bomb on Me" making anybody sad at any point. But the common denominator was most of them, like Imagine, was somewhat anti-war, and so.
How did you feel about that?
I didn't know about it immediately. I found out about it much later, and I thought, wow, why? How do you get it in your head that after anything, tragic or otherwise, that there might be songs people probably shouldn't hear? And that song in particular just seemed utterly absurd.
I mean, a song about peace had no
Now, like I
relevance.
said, that was kind of the common thread that ran through this list. Was somewhat anti-war, messages of peace, and much later, I got in the car one day, and when I turned it on, the radio was on, and Imagine was playing. It had been back on the radio, and I decided I was going to write that song. I didn't know what it was going to sound like or what the first words were going to be, but I knew I needed to write a song about it.
That song is like many on this record because it references a very specific events. And you've got songs that are about the Oregon school shooting, songs that are directly about Black Lives Matter and police shootings. Patterson, tell me about that choice to write about those events, if indeed it was a choice.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I don't think the writing about it was a choice. Probably for either one of us. Maybe putting it on the album or making an album out of that, maybe. But when I wrote "What It Means" was the first song that I wrote for what became this album, and when I wrote that, I wasn't even really thinking in terms of like the next Drive-By Truckers record or an album anyway. It was something that I'd been seeing happen over and over in our society, and not just the actual events themselves, but just the whole mindset that goes with it and that accompanies that. And I've been watching that play out, and particularly after everything that happened with Trayvon Martin, and then the Ferguson situation. I just had to try to make sense of it. I was just writing to vent my frustration, and that's kind of my therapy. How I'm able to deal with most things that bother me. Is majority of songs of mine come from something bugging me and my way of dealing with it, and so I wrote it really for me. And at the time, I kind of probably naively thought that this is something that's so of this moment, it won't really even have any relevance by the time the band reconvenes. It wasn't, we were touring on a pretty new record at the time when I wrote it, and I wasn't really thinking in terms of there being another Drive-By Trucker record this quickly. And I started playing it. I was doing a few solo shows for the holidays, and I started playing it, including I played it in St. Louis, and got like a really kind of unexpectedly over the top positive reaction from it. And I played it in Selma, Alabama at at a show I played there just a few days after the film Selma had opened, and there'd been all this kind of national attention, and it was a little bit of a sore spot, some of the attention, and I played that song there, and it was people responded very positively to it, and I played it for the band, and it kind of became a trucker song, and he responded by playing me one of his songs called Raymond Calciano that ended up being the first song on the album, and that's kind of when we started realizing that that's probably where this album was going to go, and that it was going to be sooner than later.
The events that you dissect on American Band, they resonate very strongly up here in Canada as well. And from our perspective, we see the debate around things like the Confederate flag, but we don't live it. You guys do. Cooley, how would you sum up what it's like living in this political and social climate and living in the South today?
Well, when I was growing up, the display of the Confederate flag was, it was, it was more widespread, more common. But in recent years, I don't see it as much. After the shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, in the church, it sparked the debate over the flag again, and of course, people started waving it and fighting over it again. But for the most part, it had kind of disappeared. It's one of those relics from our past that we can't quite let go of, and it's complicated. It's really I don't know how to wrap my head around it because they say it's not out of racism, and for some it's not. But that doesn't mean they're not racist. That's just not how they express it. So see, it gets complicated when you. Oh. But it's one of those things when I think when people associate their identity with objects, the more they associate identity with objects, the more defensive and protective they become of those objects. And it's really easy, especially if you have something to gain, by making them feel threatened and using those objects that they wrap their identity in to feel like it's going to be taken away from them somehow. Mm-hmm. And you can lead them wherever you want them to go if you can tap into that wiring.
When you first started playing songs for each other and realized that this material was so timely and so political, did it kind of make you sort of sit back and go, whoa, is this the way we want to go? Like, how is this going to be received? What were you thinking? Were you a little nervous about this?
A little, but not really for my own safety so much. I think most of those people are all talk. What I wouldn't want to happen and would have to stand up against would be if maybe schoolmates of my children, if their parents may be saying things at home and those kids were bringing it to school and taking it out on my kids, I might have a problem with that. We might have to have a talk. Mm-hmm. But other than that, and that hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. Most of the negativity and backlash is out on social media, and you never know who those people are, if they're really even serious about what they're saying.
Patterson, did these songs come to you as a surprise that this is where the band was headed and this is what the album was going to be like?
I think once I came to terms with that's what we were going to do, it was kind of like floodgates opened, and so much of it was timing and the situation too. I mean, like I was, I moved with my family. We moved cross country, and we took 3 weeks on that drive, and it kind of turned it into like a vacation, and it was during that drive. We were about halfway cross country. We were in Denver, Colorado, when the news broke about the Charleston shooting, and because I'd been pretty outspoken about issues of Southern identity in the past and issues about race in the South in the past, I started getting like people like asking me for comments or even some interviews and stuff. And one thing led to another, and it ended up writing an op-ed for the New York Times about the flag issue and in the wake of the massacre in Charleston. And the day that I wrote that, the day I wrote my first draft of the op-ed, I wrote "Darkened Flags on the Cusp of Dawn" from the new album. And it was kind of like one thing led to another, and right after that, on that same cross-country trip, we spent the night in the town where Umpqua College is. And I didn't really see much of the town. I mean, we got in the hotel, we were tired, we slept, we got up, we ate at a diner and drove on to Portland. But
And another tragedy from that town,
right,
too.
and I saw enough to know it was a beautiful little town, and so sitting on my porch on a really sunny, beautiful fall morning a couple of months later, when the news broke about the shooting at the college, at Umpqua Community College, I could picture the town. And I knew that their weather was probably similar to what my weather was being. It was a beautiful day, and I'm thinking, how does, I was trying to put together the beautiful day versus which, as 9/11 was a beautiful day. It happens sometimes, and in the movies, it's always this dark, ominous cloud when something horrific happens. But in real life, sometimes it's on a beautiful sunny day, and I was trying to put that together.
When you were writing these songs, though, this was before the election, and
Oh, way
you
before.
probably thought in your head, like a lot of people did in the U.S., that you were going to be seeing your first female U.S. president.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when we started recording this, nobody had voted in anything yet. The nominees were not locked in, and we were still thinking, people will start voting and this will go away. No,
Tell me about the night of the election. Where were you? What were you guys
we were in
doing?
Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How-
it was surreal.
Yeah.
We had the night off, and we all were sitting together, having a few drinks, watching the election returns come in.
Then we had
and
a
then,
lot more after that.
and then all of a sudden, it's like we weren't drinking out of fun anymore, And so it was very surreal. And I woke up the next day, and I was really trying to think, well, what is my job now? What is it? And it's strange because as a band, our songs prior to this record, the big difference between this record and previous records is we've always sort of avoided being overly timely. We've been political all along, but we've never been kind of timely. I mean, we put out Southern Rock Opera in 2001, but the songs were set in the early 70s in the post-civil rights South. And, the Dirty South, a lot of those songs were set kind of in the Reagan 80s South. And, and I always felt like the themes were still resonated and were still appropriate to this time, but there was always that illusion of this being like a period piece, like the film Chinatown. And so, but this record we knew was about right now. And so we went super timely. Therefore, I kind of assumed that after November, we would kind of have the problem of figuring out this year what we were, we'd still be playing those songs, but the show was going to have a different shape because the election was over. People were going to move on. We'd get on with our lives.
What really let the air out of me was, all of these things that we're taking to task, people who hold to these opinions and these worldviews, how validated and emboldened they feel right now and felt in that moment. And they don't need any encouragement.
Well, you are definitely toe to toe and chin to chin with these issues right now that are on the album. And when people reference musicians speaking out politically, somebody's going to bring up the Dixie Chicks. And like you, they spoke up. And at the time, they lost a lot of fans out of the mainstream country fans, and they were exiled for a long time. Was there any fear that speaking up like this, that you would suddenly lose what fans you had?
We had a
or-
lot less to lose. Yeah, there's a slight reference to the Dixie Chick controversy on the song we just played. Um, yeah, we figured. I never really figured we would be abandoned. I mean, banning us from radio was not really much of a loss for us, you know.
Here's a band with nothing to lose.
Yeah, right. If we lost 10% of our fans, that'd be about 10 people. Um,
That's not true.
that's not true.
That's not at all
But
true.
no, we figured most of the people who come to our shows know what we're about and knew that before we made this record.
But is there an extra kind of twinge when you go out now and sing these songs in a particular place and that you've never played these songs before about how people are going to respond to them? Do you have people walking out or not?
A little.
Yeah.
But seldom. I can name one show off the
Yeah.
top of my mind. Last of all the shows, we've played a lot of shows. We've been out working since July, and we've been playing 5 and 6 nights a week, plus doing tons of press, and plus he and I both played solo shows during the holidays some.
And I can tell you the show we're talking about where people walked out was not in the Deep South.
No, it was not.
Really? Where was it?
And it was surreal because the only real pushback we felt at a show was a show in California.
Coastal.
Yeah,
Really?
and that particular night, I was kind of shocked by it because it was so much more than we'd seen. And the next day we were going to be in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm thinking, wow, we might be in trouble. It's like we're about to go to the
Arizona.
border state, and and then we got to Phoenix and we had double the turnout we've ever had in that town, and by far the warmest reaction we've ever gotten there, and and one of my favorite shows of the tour. And so it's been a little unpredictable. I mean, right after the election, we were aiming south when the election happened, and we went and we played North Carolina and Florida and Georgia and Alabama, and on the wake of the election, and had wonderful turnout and wonderful shows. In Tuscaloosa, Alabama, we were treated great, and we played the same show we've been playing, so.
What do you think your role is? Has it changed since the election and since you put out this album? Do you think that your jobs and what you're doing with your music, has that changed now?
I think now we're the dance band for the resistance.
Yeah, you don't really. I don't think you have a lot of impact on changing the way people think. I mean, it's important to say it, and it's a powerful message. But I really don't believe that many, if any, of Bruce Springsteen's more right-leaning fans have changed their views. They go to his shows and they sing along to his proletariat anthems, and then they went and they voted for Donald Trump.
But when I agree with what Cooley's saying as far as like you're not going to change people's minds, but you can provide a sort of momentum building for things. I'm reading Mavis Staples' biography right now, and just started it, but I kind of know the basic of the story anyway. But Martin Luther King, when he started really started the civil rights, really started putting it all together, one of the first things he did was ask Pop Staples if they would accompany him and provide music. And that is such a huge part of the story that doesn't get told as much, is that at every rally where you saw King, the Staple Singers were there performing and bringing this beautiful music, that was uplifting and powerful, and it does help. It does help bring
It helps.
people
You
together.
can you can have an impact on people who haven't made their minds up and aren't already set in their ways, and that's important.
Well, when I listened to the album, it was a very intense experience, and I felt from you guys, I could feel sadness, but I didn't hear resignation. I
Right.
didn't hear a lot of hope, but it didn't feel hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
How would you pitch your mood in these songs and how you see the future?
My mood's changed. I mean, I'm I'm no less hopeful for the future in a broad sense. I mean, I think that civilization is moving in a slowly zigzagging but forward direction overall.
I think what we're seeing now is the fear of that,
Yeah.
and it's a pushback that we weren't really expecting, but it's proof that what we're seeing and what we're optimistic about is happening,
Yeah.
or this wouldn't have happened. They're
I
scared to
agree.
death.
Now, as far as short term, I don't have. I'm way less optimistic than usual.
Yeah.
Short term, I'm still trying to put together how I feel even about it. Because I don't like the behavior of what's going on right now, and I don't like the way this immigration ban was launched and handled, and I don't like the mindset that accompanies it. The mindset more even than the specifics of things. Just it scares me and it bothers me. But I'm around a lot of kids because we've got kids, and I'm active in their school, and I'm around besides my own kids, I'm around a lot of young people, and they're amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it's so much different. We got to be honest. If you're over 50 and white in America, most of us were exposed to and really raised around racist language, opinions, the idea that people of other races are criminal or inherently inferior was kind of instilled in you. And you didn't have to come from the rural South like I did. But now that's not the case so much anymore. There are still racist parents raising children right now, for sure. But I don't think it's as normal for kids to just hear these words
Right.
used nonchalantly in sentences in their household like it was when we were growing up.
And not just race too. I mean,
That's just one example.
Homosexuality and that's, I mean, that's a very, very different mindset. My kids really would not be able to fathom some of the things around that we grew up seeing, as
Yeah.
far as name
Some of us got
calling and
over it, some of us
bullying and-
didn't. you know?
So
Well, welcome to the world of protest music.
Yeah.
You're going to perform another song. What's it going to be?
do a song called "What It Means," which I referred to a minute ago. It was I guess the first thing I really wrote for what became this record, and I wrote it a couple of years ago during, right after the Ferguson decision and the, Trayvon Martin's murder was really, really fresh in everybody's collective memory, and it was still kind of in the news, and just the fact that the things like that keep happening, and it all ties in with what we were also talking about. One of the themes of this record is fear of the other, whatever the other may be.
Somebody other than you.
Yeah, they're out to get me. And this kind of collective paranoia about it, and it's nothing new, but it's I guess I thought we were further from it, further along maybe, and so this song was about a lot of that.
Cooley, what was your reaction when you first heard this song by Patterson?
It was everything I'd been thinking. We were on the same page. Like I was watching this happen over and over and over, and I hadn't put it to paper yet, but it was everything I'd been thinking for sure.